These are the last days. Jesus has to be coming soon. I hear that a lot from Christians. I hear it especially from older Christians. And of course, I get it. I mean, our freedoms are being challenged more than they ever have been. What once was considered evil is now considered okay. Church attendance is declining. I mean, you just look across the spectrum and the evilness is growing. The sinfulness that we live in is growing. But I want to ask you, is that a true statement? Are these the last days? Are we in the end times that are described in the book of Revelation? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hey everybody, welcome to Thinking Out Loud with PJ. It's my goal on this channel to help you think different. And really by thinking different, I want you to think biblically. And I want you to think biblically because I want you to be able to navigate this crazy world the way that we should as Christians. If that's the kind of content you're looking for, I would encourage you click the subscribe button and of course hit the little bell because we don't want you to miss anything. Let's jump right into this. Are we living in the end times as described in the book of Revelation? And I would say the simple answer is yes. We are living in what we would call the last days. But I think it's more complicated than that. We have to take a little bit of time to unpack that, to understand what that means, and of course then think biblically about that. So what do we mean by it's more complicated than that? Well, there are three things that I want to talk about that maybe you haven't thought about when we say, yes, we are in the last days. First thing that we need to understand is that time is literally nothing with God. Time is nothing because of eternity. So if you were to just simply take a pencil and draw a line as far as you can see in either way, I want you to let that represent eternity, looking as far as you can this way into eternity future and as far as you can this way into eternity past. So that's eternity. And then if you were to take a pencil and literally put a dot on that line, that's time. That's what we live in. So when we start to talk about what we would consider to be the last days, man, for God, that's nothing, right? For God in eternity, from the time Christ rose again and ascended into heaven to now is nothing. It's nothing. So for us, we might say, yeah, Christ is coming soon biblically, but is that really soon for us or is that soon for God? And that leads us kind of into the next thing. So for me to say, yes, we are living in the end days, it's kind of a simple answer to say that because Jesus told us in John 14:2-3, he said, "In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you that I go and prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, and I will take you to myself, that where I am, there ye may be also." So Jesus tells us here that when he returns home, and when he ascended after giving us the Great Commission and went home, then the end of time has started. His plan now is winding down. The church has been birthed. The church is growing. And could Christ return at any time, or at least could the rapture happen at any time? And I would say, yes, it could. That's the next major thing to happen prophetically, really, as far as for the church. We're just waiting. But what I want us to think about through that is, okay, so number one, time is nothing for God. And then number two is, well, of course it's the end times because Jesus is preparing a place for us. But let's think about it. Something I think we miss a lot as Christians is Paul. Paul literally thought he was in the last days. Paul talked like we talk. Paul says, man, look at the world today. It's going crazy. These have to be the last days. Listen to Romans 13. Verse 11 and 12. He says, besides this, you know the time, that the hour has come for you to wake from sleep, for salvation is nearer to us now than when you first believed. The night is far gone, the day is at hand. So then let us cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. We could go to Ephesians chapter 5, 15 and 16. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of time, because the days are evil. Paul believed that he was living in what we would call the last days. He wrote to Timothy, and he said, in the last days, people are not going to want to listen to you. In these last days that we're in, people are not going to want to listen to you. Are we in the last days? Yes. But I am not sure that we are in the last days the way we think we are. Okay? Though we may be living in the last days, it may be generations before Jesus returns. Because it has been generations upon generations since Paul thought Jesus was going to return, and here we still are. So here is how we should think about that. Number one of the things I'd like for us to think about is the curse. I think we as Christians so often forget about the curse. We see the evil that's going on, and we just simply forget that Jesus put a curse on the world. Okay? Romans 8. What does Paul say in Romans 8? He says that all creation is groaning and travailing, and it's just going to get worse and worse. When I hear Christians look at the news, look at what's going on around us, and say, oh, it's got to be the end times. It's got to be the end times. Here's what I think. Well, do you not remember that we live in a sinful world? Do you not remember that Jesus said from the moment of the fall, things would get worse and worse and worse? That's what's happening. Things are just getting worse and worse. Is Jesus coming soon? Sure, Jesus could come today for his church. He could do that. But as we think about it, the world is just going to keep getting worse progressively until Jesus comes to make all things new. The other thing I want us to think about when I hear this question, or this statement rather, when people say, well, I think that Christ is coming soon because look how bad it's getting. I want to remind you of something. And I'm speaking to my audience that lives in the United States now, and I think that's where most of my audience comes from. If you are a Christian who lives in the United States, you and I have been living in a bubble, especially the generations before mine, because you lived in a time when everybody went to church. On Sundays, things shut down. And whether you were truly a believer or not, you went to church because that's just simply what people did, right? They went to church. That was the good moral thing to do. In fact, there were what? There were morals, more so than there are today. There were these good Christian or religious things happening. There was a moral compass. People were embracing religious things. God was not rejected in the ways that he is today. But what I want to remind you of is, though we were experiencing that here, the rest of the world was not necessarily experiencing that. That was a bubble that we lived in the United States. And it appears as though God is removing that hand of blessing. God seems to be removing that opportunity for us to live that way. And now we're beginning to experience what life is in the world for real. And rather than realizing, oh, we just had a privilege of living that way, we start thinking, oh, it has to be the end times. Well, so we've kind of determined that that's true, though, right? It is the end times. So what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it being the end times if we said, well, it is the end times? Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to wake up. We're going to do exactly what Paul said in Romans 13 and Ephesians 5 when he said, people, wake up because the end is near. We're going to do that. We need to do that as Christians. We need to wake up, and we need to realize that the end is near and we have work to do. If you're still on this earth, it is because Jesus has a purpose for your life, and we need to wake up. So not only do we need to wake up, I would say don't give up. What breaks my heart is that I see so many of these Christians, especially older Christians, who are now looking and saying, oh, the return is near. I can't wait for Christ to come back. What I see in them is almost a defeat. They might not admit it, and they might not fully even recognize it in themselves. But rather than fighting and continuing to advance the gospel and realize the return might be near, I have to make the most of every opportunity I'm given. Instead, what I'm seeing are Christians who are just kind of hunkering down in their home. They're going to church. They're doing these things inside of this bubble or this fortress, and they've really kind of waved the white flag, and they've said, all right, Lord, you have to be coming soon. Just get me out of here. Yet remember, Jesus prayed to the Father and he said, don't take them out of the world. Leave them here and just protect them from the evil one. We're still here, so we have a purpose. We have a reason for being here. Paul wrote in 1 Thessalonians to the church in Thessalonica, he said, yes, the time is getting closer. We have hope because Jesus is coming back. But really what we miss when we read 1 Thessalonians is the really kind of the point of that book. We focus on the things that are coming. We focus on the rapture. We focus on the hope, and we miss all of the rest of the book that talks about doing the work that Christ put us here for in light of the hope that we have. So what do I want to say to you today? I want to say, yes, we are in the end time. Will we see that end in our lifetime? I have no idea. The Bible is clear. The Bible is clear that nobody knows when Christ is coming back for his church. We don't know. And it could be any time. We don't know, but what I know is I'm not going to sit around and worry about it. I'm going to be hopeful, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to see a lost world and realize that I have an immense amount of work to do. Jesus said to his disciples, go and make other disciples. In the meantime, I'm going to go prepare a place for you. But while I am preparing, you go reach the world for Christ, make disciples that make other disciples. Is the end near? Yes. So what do I need to do? I need to wake up, I need to get up, and I need to go into the world and start making disciples. So what about you? What are you doing with this thought that Jesus is coming soon? Are you kind of panicking and just throwing up the red flag and saying, Lord, please take me out of this terrible world? Or are you realizing we have a short amount of time, we need to get busy, and we need to get going because God has a job for you, and God has a job for me. Well, I want to say thanks for watching this video. Again, if you appreciated it, hit the like button. If this video encouraged you also, I want to say just share it. Share it with your friends. Let somebody else listen to this. Thanks again, and we will see you in the next video.